Let's dive into some of the week's games. And I'll just go AFC and then NFC. I think the Jacksonville Jags, if I was in a business relationship with Trevor Lawrence, I was his coach, I was his general manager, worked in the front office, I was the ownership, I would be so ecstatic for these last 3 weeks because the Titans game was win or get in. It didn't go that well for Trevor. I thought he didn't even play that well, but they won. And then in the first round of the playoffs, he has, I don't even think it's hyperbolic to say this, the worst half of his entire life. I can't imagine a guy, and definitely since high school and college, that's the worst half Trevor Lawrence has ever played. And then he comes back and he shows the mental fortitude. Like, I'd be all in on him. I think we got a guy that in a year or two should be considered in the group of Burrow, Allen, and obviously Mahomes. Maybe not be as good as Mahomes, but like can be an excellent elite player. We also won, like our Super Bowl was kind of last year, that comeback. Remarkable moment for the franchise. I think it's going to be really hard to keep the gas pedal down, especially on the road, in the cold. They've benefited a lot, and they deserve, I mean, the home game in week 18, like that's just your home game. And obviously getting to host the Chargers, even though they have a better record than you because of the rules of, you know, the way division winners get to host a playoff game. But I would expect it to end. And I think I like the Chiefs enormous in this game. And I think Kansas City, to me, they're the favorite to win it all. But I think in the past, they have been a little hit or miss in this game. I think when you look at them going into this game against the Jags, like this is a moment where it's like, we ain't fucking around. Last year, we're a win away from going to our 5th straight AFC Championship game. Last year, we should have gone to the Super Bowl, and the second half was a disaster. Mahomes has been on a warpath this year. He's going to win the MVP. He clearly just off-season, the focus level. I remember a buddy on the staff was like, I'm telling you, this dude's on a different level right now. They flipped Tyreek, and their offense, while it's not as explosive as it was last year, to me, you watch them when they're on, like they can score on anyone at any moment. So I like the Chiefs big in this game. I think the Jags have had a fantastic season. If I was a Jags fan, if I was on the Jags front office, worked in the organization, I would be so excited about where we're headed because we are another good offseason, add a running back, add a tight end, keep improving the defense, and be like, we're going to win this division again. And I think most people, and depending on how the offseason goes, probably including myself, are going to pick them to win the AFC South next year. Bills-Bengals. Here's the thing. Everyone's talking about how the Bengals don't have an offensive line, right? But their left tackle dislocates his kneecap. Never had that happen. Sounds very painful. They're missing several other offensive linemen. They were last week as well. It's hard to overcome that. Joe Burrow got sacked a ton last year, and without their left tackle, Jonah Williams, who's missed 6 snaps, it's hard to replace that guy. But here's what I do know. Last year, their offensive line was horrendous, and Jonah Williams gets KO'd in that game, right? He has to leave and doesn't come back. They're 4-1 in their last 5 playoff games. That includes the Super Bowl, where they easily could have won. I don't think it's inconceivable that we're talking about a team that's won 5 straight playoff games. They were leading in the Super Bowl late in that game. So this team, and specifically this quarterback, just knows how to win when shit's on the line, and it's really important. And he's kind of got to stay alive because guys get by his offensive linemen. So most quarterbacks, like if you tell me Brock Purdy, like Trent Williams is out and they're missing a guard, like, yeah, Brock Purdy be in some trouble. But Joe Burrow, like, he's used to keeping plays alive when guys can't block people ahead of him. And T. Higgins and Jamar Chase dominate. And here's the thing. This game was supposed to happen, so these teams have a pretty good feel for each other in terms of they game planned all week, and then they didn't use it. Now, you look at, like, to me, didn't Joe Burrow throw a touchdown in that? Wasn't the score 7-3? Do I have that mixed up before that game, before the DeMar Hamlin situation happened? And listen, when it comes to the Bills and Josh Allen, I'm as big a Josh Allen fan probably as anyone that's not a Bills fan. But he throws a lot of picks right now. And it's one thing, like some of Dak's picks, in fairness, are bouncing off guys. Josh Allen's hitting guys in the hands. Like some of those Trevor Lawrence picks, hitting Asante Samuel in the hands. Like Josh, sometimes in Mahomes, this happened to last year, like dump the ball off. And here's the thing. When you're in the front office and you're in a window to win now, and you go all in on one specific older player, I understand why Von Miller, the stretch that he had last year for the Rams, all those sacks. He had a sack in week 18. He had a sack in all the playoff games and the Super Bowl. He was remarkable. And he's one of the great players of all time. But he was also kind of old, and he'd been banged up before. They paid him $50+ million in guarantees. And if you told me he was in this game fully healthy, I'd be like, the pass rush for the Bills is going to be too much. Well, he's hurt. Now, listen, obviously it's a freak injury in ACL. Well, he's had multiple ACLs in his career. And this is when you go all in on an older player and you're going to be just a powerhouse team. Like, it's going to be hard for that guy to be there in January. It just is. And Von Miller's not there. So I'd lean the Bills to win this game, but I talk about Stuckey. I'm going to take the Bengals on the points for sure. And honestly, I might sprinkle a little Bengals money line. NFC. I think all the pressure's on the Eagles, man. I think the amount of pressure in this game that's on Sirianni, who's probably going to lose his offensive coordinator, and who knows, maybe his defensive coordinator. So they might have multiple new coordinators. And never forget, like, this isn't Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan. He does not call the plays anymore. So their offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen, that'd be a big loss if he gets a head coaching job. And here's the thing. We won't know till the game happens, like, what's Jalen's status here? How's he feeling? Because I read Sirianni's quotes, and if you're an Eagles fan, you've been watching these press conferences. It's not like he's saying he's good to go, 100% he's fine. It's like, no, it's still something he's dealing with. And as I'm recording this, Lane Johnson's limited in practice. Listen, he's going to play. They're going to shoot that bad boy up. But we've seen guys before. You're dealing with such a painful injury. Like, is this one of those where it's just like, God, he can't really go? And listen, the Giants do not have the firepower. They just don't. Some of these teams historically that have came out of nowhere and then started rattling off playoff victories, the Giants have done it a couple times, right? With Eli Manning. They had higher end players. Like, how many high end players do the Giants have? Saquon, Dexter Lawrence. Like, Kayvon's not what OC and some of those guys were in the peak of their powers when they went on runs. He might be in a couple years, but he's not right now, right? So I just don't think they have enough. I just watched the Eagles-Cowboy game from Christmas Eve. Listen, if you have NFL Plus, highly recommend just watch that game, because you might have missed it. Christmas Eve, holidays, hang with the fam. That game was remarkable. The Eagles, if Jalen is just close to 90%, Devontae Smith, I didn't quite realize what a year by that guy. 95 catches. A.J. Brown is, I don't know if we do a good enough job as like, are we sure he's not the best wide receiver in the NFL? Like, you could make that argument. Like Devontae, him, Justin Jefferson, like Tyreek, he's right there. And Devontae, in a weird way, he's flown under the radar. So the Eagles have no business not winning this game. To me, the only way the Giants have a chance is obviously like turnovers, an ugly, it's like 10-10 at half. Philly, been to a lot of games at the Link. This place just gets tight. But the Eagles, sometimes when they're feeling each other in the one game, and I was reading this article in The Athletic about Steichen, his mentor's Norv Turner. And there were a lot of quotes in there from Norv, and Norv was talking about the Giants game, how good of a job Shane did. They just spread them out. They got better athletes. They got more team speed, and there's nothing the Giants can do. And you can't put anything in that Week 18 game because they were benching all the players. But when you look at Christmas Eve, man, that thing was not Christmas Eve, but the first time they played, I remember sitting on my couch like, I'm pretty excited for Giants Eagles. And then I wasn't, because I changed the game by the second quarter because it was an ass kicking. And then last but not least, the Niners Cowboys. This is from my childhood. Aikman versus Young. Now, this is a little different, Purdy versus Dak, but this is a big moment for Kyle and Brock Purdy. I mean, Kyle won 2 playoff games last year on the road. He won another playoff game, obviously beat Seattle, who's not very good. But all of a sudden, you're looking at a guy that's got 4 playoff wins in 12 months, 2 with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's banged up, and now Brock Purdy, who's Mr. Irrelevant. And obviously their team, like, the reason they're able to do this is because their team is really, really good. When you talk about the Giants not having a lot of high-end players, it's the opposite for the 49ers. They got high-end players, literally every single unit. And I just think they got too much firepower on offense. The other thing, I talked to Stuckey about this, the disadvantage of the time. The Niners played Saturday afternoon. So the game kicked off at 1:30, was over by 4:45 Pacific Standard Time. Well, then Sunday and Monday, they got 48 hours before the Monday night game even kicked off. And then the game kicks off. By the time the Cowboys coaching staff got home, now I would imagine they had their quality control guy breaking it down during Monday and probably even Sunday, but still, like, Mike McCarthy's probably not diving into that thing till he gets on the plane. And, I don't know how much Adderall and coffee you can even take, but the amount of time in the week. So this team, they did not play each other this year. So it's not like, They played each other in week 7. I just think it's a huge, huge disadvantage for Dallas. Now, here's what I will say. Watching that Eagle game, just watching the Cowboys. Cowboys do have high-end players. And when Dak is on, people think I'm a Dak hater. I'm not. I just don't love paying him $40 million. To me, he's more 28 to 30. Now, I get the market pays that, but like Dak needs good talent around him. Most quarterbacks do, but like Patrick Mahomes, we saw this year, get rid of Tyreek Hill, MVP, right? Like Dak, it is much more difficult for the most games. Like last game, the way he played, now Tampa sucks, but the way Dak was playing, when he's rolling like that, he can be a top 5 player for a game. But being a top 5 player for a season is every single week. And that's where Dak can kind of be a little bit of a roller coaster. And I think it's going to be harder against the 49ers. Like when Dak's on the move, he is excellent. And that's a huge separating factor between him and Cousins. He's athletic, Cousins not, because they get compared to each other all the time. Harder to run around on the Niners. Why? They have so much team speed. All their linebackers fly. Fred Warner, Greenlaw, Alshire. All their defensive linemen can move, beside Kinlaw, who's got a degenerate knee, but that's for another conversation. Draft pick 14. The point is, it's going to be harder for Dak to just be flying around. We saw it last year. Now, I think this Dallas Cowboy team is better than last year's team. So if you told me they were on the same amount of rest schedule, I'd be like, the Cowboys can win. The Cowboys can win. I think it's very, very difficult. I really do. And if they do, I would expect Dan Quinn to probably be the coordinator of the weekend and just, get after Purdy. Because the other one thing is Purdy can move. And Purdy was running away from Seattle. Now, Seattle, this is not the Legion of Boom. And Cliff Averill and some of those guys, Bruce Irvin in his prime, even though Bruce was actually on the team again, were not chasing him, and they couldn't catch him. Well, Micah Parsons is going to be able to catch him. And Dan Quinn will bring pressure. It's just going to be like Mike. He's not going to be able to run away from Micah Parsons. But I'll give Purdy this. Like Purdy understands who can run and who can't. So he has a pretty good feel when a guy's chasing him. He'll throw the ball away or he'll keep the play alive. To me, that's going to be a huge, huge thing to watch. Like, can they get after Purdy? Does Purdy try to make plays out of his ass? Because he does sometimes. And he's mainly avoided disaster. But like, does one of these plays, he try to do a 360 in the pocket and run into Parsons, all of a sudden it's a fumble 6? If you tell me that type of stuff's happening, the Cowboys have a chance. But this should be a very, very fun weekend of football.